on BBC Local Radio in Shropshire, South Cheshire, North Staffordshire, the West Midlands, Worcestershire and Herefordshire. You're listening to The Gruesome Twosome. Mike Adams and Chris Savoury on the show that values your vinyls. It's The Record Collectors between now and 9 tonight.
Our special guest on the Record Collector programme this evening is a legend from the 60s that will need no introduction to our regular listeners, I'm sure. That is Jet Harris, formerly of The Shadows, and of course the duo known as Jet Harris and Tony Meehan, which had chart-topping hits in the early 60s. Welcome to our programme, Jet.
Thanks for asking me, Mike.
Now, I've caught you as you've just come off stage here in Wolverhampton, and I know you've just driven from Great Yarmouth, which I did last week, so I know how far it is, and to be performing as well, so you have my sympathy.
Thank you very much.
So I'm glad you could take the time out to talk to us.
Well, of course.
Now, let's look at your early...
My favourite programme, of course.
Let's look at your early part of your career, the start of it, the meeting of the Shadows, how you got involved with the Shadows and so on. Can you just recount for us how you got involved with the Drifters that became the Shadows, those early days?
I can. When I started off as a modern jazz player on double bass, and then they invented the bass guitar, which apparently, I'm told, I was the first to play in England. I was with Tony Crombie and the Rockets,
yes,
and Wee Willie Harris at the time, and Mr. Crombie told me that there was such an invention, and I tried it. And then I went down to the Two Eyes Coffee Bar with this new invention. I mean, we're talking in the days of skiffle now, you see.
Right.
And it became popular, of course, the bass guitar. And of course everybody was giving me work because I was the only bass guitarist around with such a new sound. This is true. And I went on tour with... I met Hank and Bruce in the Two Eyes, and we were on tour with the Most Brothers, Mickey Most, of course.
Lord, yes.
And on this show was a funny chap in a pink jacket and pink socks called Harry Webb, who's now Cliff Richard, of course.
His real name is Cliff Richard now, isn't it? He changed it by...
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, you've told me something. And he offered me a job, which I sort of hummed and hawed about, until I saw his record, Move It. Started moving up the charts. I thought, get in. So I got in and became a Shadow.
Your style and your playing, I mean, what were your early influences? You mentioned jazz, but... I mean, as there was nothing before you like bass guitars, I mean, it's all so early on. I mean, where did you draw from? I mean, what was your, as a lad...
Mike, you are not going to believe this. Winifred Atwell.
I can believe it, because, I mean, she was...
No, it was that left-hand boogie.
Yes.
Which I thought I've got to be able to do. I wanted that. I really wanted to be able to do that, and
She was magic,
That's probably why I went on bass, you know, because... I did start on clarinet. But I smoked, and I couldn't puff. I started sucking it, you know, with a bit of old Holborn in the end, yeah.
Jet Harris and Tony Meehan hits together. Why did it suddenly dry up, do you think? Why it stopped? What actually stopped there?
Well, myself and the lady that was on the show,
Billy Davis, the car crash.
We got terrible. Yeah, we really got hit there, Mike. I mean, we were chauffeur driven, and it was found out in the end that we went into a single-decker bus, and it was so bad the bus was a write-off. I'm serious, the bus was a write-off.
Because all the national papers, it was all front page. I remember that well.
Right.
Because Tell Him, by Billy Davis, that was in the charts at the same time. Her career was going full steam, your career was full steam. And it's rather reminiscent of a few other people about it. I mean, Carl Perkins comes to mind a bit before then, who had blue suede shoes, had a terrible car crash, and of course then Presley did it, and he got left behind at the race, and then you had an accident. And
that's right, and then we were just both very ill. I mean, I had the top of my head was wide open. We were in the back of a Humber Hawk. Does anybody remember them? Yeah. Humber Hawk. I did my head on the ashtray. I was asleep on Billy's lap, and she broke her jaw on the back of my head, apparently. And it was awful, you know. I mean, we're lucky to be here, you know. Yeah,
well, you're looking very good, if I may say so. Time has gone by, and today you've got a new career for yourself. I mean, you pop in and do these drop-ins on things like these rock and roll shows, which was great to see the legends again. But you're now a professional photographer.
That's right, yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that? And how it came about?
Well, I started years ago. What happened, when I was on tour with Cliff and the Shads, we used to go, we were around the world, and of course, London couldn't send photographers to take pictures of Cliff. So what I did is I took pictures and sent them back to things like the Record Mirror. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, of course.
And Musical Express and Melody Maker. So
and disc?
Of course, disc, yes. And I sent these pictures back, sort of like if we were in Australia, Cliff throwing a boomerang or something, or hurling the odd Aborigine or something, you know. I used to send these pictures back for these, and I didn't get paid. They paid me. I'll tell you what they used to do with me. They used to give me LPs.
Now, today, photography-wise, have you got a studio, and whereabouts is that?
I live in Gloucester now, and I've got a huge lounge and a very understanding wife. I've got backdrops and stuff, you know, and I'm not into babies or weddings. I mean, weddings are so nervous. I mean, imagine if it doesn't go right, and you've got to ask Auntie Hilda to put the hat on next week because it didn't come out. You know, you've got to ask them all back.
So what kind of photography are you doing?
Well, I'm into tabletop stuff, close-ups and, industrial stuff I do. And, well, it's a good scene, but the thing is, I with this 60s bit about now, I can't... I'll put it this way, photography is taking the back seat at the moment.
What's your views?
On what?
On modern music today, on the progress of...
There's some excellent stuff. I'm not going to put it down, but my God, there's some rubbish.
Right then. Yeah. I mean, are you surprised, or does it come as no surprise to you? I mean, as I walked in the theatre tonight, there were literally people from 8 to 80, a lot of teenagers in the audience.
Well, this is what I can't understand. Now, half of our audiences that we've had all over the country, they're 17, 18, and they're wearing Dad's Teddy suit, you know, which is incredible. And they're saying to me, you know, when we're sort of signing autographs and stuff, they're saying, I wish I'd have been around. They wanted to be born earlier.
Right.
Because to me, I don't know, I mean, I'm going to get put down for this, but the music's done a full circle and they've come back to us again.
I think you're right.
Well, I mean, for instance, Diction on record went with the wind, but now, when we made records years ago, look, Cliff, for instance, you could understand every word. But I mean, now they're talking about ridiculous things like from moles to beer cans in one sentence, and I'm sorry, I can't understand it.
Tell me this, did it surprise you that Living Doll recently topped the charts, a remake with a young, admittedly it was a remake, but it was very similar, of course, the riffs were very similar to the original.
Did it surprise me? No, not at all. I mean, for goodness sakes, what are they doing but coming back to what I've just said?
Perhaps they reissued the Living Doll they came out the first time round.
Well, they could do a good job on Diamonds, you know. Dwayne Eddy is not doing so bad, is he?
That would make a good one, wouldn't it?
What, Dwayne Eddy and...
I know, Diamond's been revamped.
No.
What do you think?
No, I'll tell you what, I've been offered a thing by a company to do some more, but they want me to do... I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, don't tell us then.
They want me to do some things.
It'd be magic if you could put some down on wax again and we could play.
Dwayne Eddy, my friend, has got to go.
So we're going to maybe see Jet on wax again in the near future.
That's right.
I hope so. Yeah. I do hope so. And it'd be nice if you could perhaps do an album of your hits that, in fact, the younger audience could get their hands on. Because your old records, there's an EP I've got hold of called Jet Antonio on Decca. You seen it?
Right, yeah.
You remember that
yeah.
one? That's very collectible. Your records are very, very collectible. And particularly the album which was the last concert, as I recall, at Gloucester. Which of course, now thank goodness it's not the last concert, but those are now fetching £15, £20 a time. So, I mean, that's very collectible items. I know our listeners would love to get their hands on copies of those.
Well, there is a one-off that we played for the prisoners in Gloucester, And my manager at the time was in the audience with all the gear, and he recorded it and made this album, you know, which I refused to listen to.
Anyway, you'd be pleased to know that a lot of other people found it very listenable. And of all the records that you played on, what would you like us to play this evening?
Well, the best, I suppose, the cleverest thing we did was main title theme. I'd like to hear that.
And who was on it? Just tell us who was on that.
Well, believe it or not, Ronnie Scott, Tubby Hayes, and a lot of jazzmen.
Thank you, Chet Harris, for being our guest on the Record Collectors.
Thank you, Mike.